What happens when a K-pop group refuses to play by the rules? Not the rules of music, the rules of the entire industry that built them. In a business where companies handpick every member, control every song, and manufacture every image, one group decided to do the opposite. Their leader chose his own teammates. Two of their members got eliminated on national television and came back. They write and produce nearly all of their own music in an industry that hands artists pre-made hits on a silver platter. And while most acts spend years chasing a single #1 album in America, this group debuted 8 consecutive albums at the top of the Billboard 200, a record no one in the chart's entire history had ever achieved before them. On top of all that, they've quietly donated hundreds of millions of won to children's hospitals, disaster relief, and global aid organizations. This is Stray Kids, and these are 5 things they did that nobody satisfying the status quo would have ever attempted. Number 5. The leader who built his own team, Stray Kids. In the K-pop industry, the power to decide who debuts in a group has always belonged to one entity, the company. SM Entertainment pioneered the modern trainee system in the 1990s, and every major agency since then has followed the same blueprint. Companies recruit through global auditions, put trainees through years of vocal, dance, rap, and language training, run monthly evaluations to weed out anyone who falls behind, and then, when they decide the time is right, executives hand-pick which trainees will form a group. The trainees themselves have virtually no say in who they stand beside on stage. That is how K-pop has worked for decades. And then, JYP Entertainment did something that broke that entire model. They handed that power to a trainee. Not a producer, not a board member, a 20-year-old kid from Sydney, Australia, named Bang Chan. To understand why that decision was so unusual, you have to understand who Bang Chan was before Stray Kids even existed. Born Christopher Bang on October 3, 1997, in Seoul, South Korea, he moved to Sydney as a young child. He grew up far removed from the K-pop world. His father ran a swimming club and coached competitors for the Special Olympics. Bang Chan himself was a competitive swimmer, a serious one. By the time he was 8 years old, he had set a school record in the 50-meter freestyle, and over the course of his youth swimming career, he reportedly accumulated close to 30 medals. Music was not his obvious path, but in 2010, when he was in 7th grade, JYP Entertainment held an open audition in Australia. His mother picked him up from school and asked if he wanted to try out. He did. Out of roughly 800 people who showed up to that audition, Bang Chan was the only one selected. The recruiters were impressed enough to request a follow-up at his home, where he played piano and guitar for them, and that sealed it. He was offered a trainee contract. At 13 years old, he left his family, his parents, his younger sister Hannah, his younger brother Lucas, and moved to South Korea alone on April 11, 2011, to begin what would become one of the longest trainee periods in JYP Entertainment history, 7 to 8 years. That is how long Bang Chan trained before he ever stood on a stage as a debuted idol. To put that in perspective, most K-pop trainees spend 2 to 4 years in the system before they either debut or get cut. Bang Chan spent nearly double that. And during those years, he watched. He watched the trainees he trained alongside, his friends, his peers, the people he ate with and practiced with every single day, debut in groups while he stayed behind. GOT7 debuted in 2014, Day 6 in 2015, twice in 2015. Every time someone he knew walked out the door and onto a stage, and he remained in the practice room. He has spoken openly about the loneliness of that experience, about feeling left behind, about watching friends either debut elsewhere or leave the industry entirely. The uncertainty of whether he would ever get his own chance was a weight he carried for years. But rather than break under that pressure, he used the time. He taught himself music production, he honed his songwriting, he studied arrangement, and in 2016, while still a trainee, he formed a production unit called rewrote with two other trainees, Han and Changbin. They began creating original music together, uploading tracks to SoundCloud, building a creative identity that existed entirely outside the company's official output. It was this combination, the patience, the skill, the creative initiative, that led JYP Entertainment to make their unprecedented move. Instead of executives selecting a group from their trainee roster, they gave that responsibility to Bang Chan. He was told to assemble the team he wanted to debut with, not based on who the company thought would sell the most albums or generate the most buzz, but based on who he believed had the right chemistry, the right complementary talents, the right personalities to function as a real unit. He chose members who covered different strengths: rap, vocal, dance, but more importantly, he chose people he had observed closely during his years as a trainee, people whose work ethic and character he trusted. The result was a group of 9 trainees who already had a bond before a single camera was pointed at them. When JYP Entertainment decided to document the group's formation through a reality show in 2017, also called Stray Kids, it was not the typical survival competition. Most survival shows pit strangers against each other for limited spots. This one followed a format called Trainees versus JYP, where the 9 members Bang Chan had assembled were tasked with proving, as a complete team, that they deserved to debut together. Their first mission was to write and perform an original song. That song was Hellevator, a title that combined hell and elevator to represent the painful climb they were making together. The music video dropped on October 6, 2017, before the show even premiered, and it immediately established something different about this group. They were not performing songs handed to them by outside writers. They were performing songs they had built from scratch. The show ran for 10 episodes on Mnet, and while the journey was not without its scars, 2 members would be temporarily eliminated along the way. The foundation Bang Chan had laid held. The group he chose, the team he believed in, would go on to debut together on March 25, 2018. But the fact that the group existed at all, that a trainee, not an executive, had been trusted to build a K-pop act from the ground up, was something the industry had never really seen before. And what happened to the 2 members who were cut from the show? That story is its own kind of surprising. Number 4, the 2 who were cut and came back, Stray Kids. The survival show was only 4 episodes in when the first blow landed. Lee No, real name Lee Min-ho, was told he was out. Park Jin-young, the founder of JYP Entertainment, looked at him and pointed to the gaps in his performance, mistakes in his rapping, a lack of confidence on stage, skills that had not caught up to the rest of the group. And on paper, the critique was not unreasonable. Lee No had joined JYP Entertainment on July 15, 2017, just a few months before the survival show began filming. His training period was, by any standard in the industry, absurdly short. Most K-pop trainees spend 2 to 4 years learning choreography, vocal technique, rap delivery, language, and stage presence before they are even considered for a debut. Lee No had weeks. But here is what made his situation unusual. He was not some inexperienced teenager walking into a company for the first time. Before JYP, Lee No was already a working professional dancer. He had started dancing in middle school, trained at Seoul's Seoul Dance Studio, and joined dance crews like Brownie Bros and Cupcakes. He performed at events like World of Dance. And most notably, between 2016 and early 2017, He worked as a backup dancer for BTS, one of the biggest acts on the planet. He appeared in music videos and stage performances for songs like Fire, Spring Day, and Not Today. He was part of their Wings tour. This was not someone learning to move for the first time. This was someone who had already stood on stages in front of tens of thousands of people, just not as the artist in the spotlight. And that was the problem that drew him to JYP in the first place. He did not want to dance behind someone else for the rest of his career. He wanted to be at the center of the stage. He had actually first auditioned for JYP back in 2015 after being noticed at a global dance event. He never heard back. He assumed he had failed and went on with his life. Then, 2 years later, in 2017, the company contacted him out of nowhere and offered him a spot. He accepted. He passed the company's required dance evaluations in just 2 weeks, reportedly the fastest anyone had ever cleared them. But dance was only one part of the equation. He now had to learn rapping and vocal performance essentially from scratch, and he had to do it while cameras were rolling. So when Park Jin-young eliminated him in episode 4, the reasoning was clear. His training period was too short, and his non-dance skills were not where they needed to be. It hurt, but it was not arbitrary. 4 episodes later, episode 8 brought the second elimination. This time it was Felix, born Lee Yong-bok on September 15, 2000, in Sydney, Australia. Felix had grown up in the suburb of Seven Hills, attended Metella Road Public School and St. Patrick's Marist College, and came from a Korean family. But growing up in Australia meant that Korean was not his dominant language. He had moved to South Korea on March 14, 2017, after being scouted by JYP Entertainment, giving him roughly a year of training before the show. When his elimination came, Park Jin-young addressed him directly. His words were specific. "Felix, your biggest problem right now is simply your Korean. I think you'll need some more time in order to be able to deliver your rap lyrics truly convincingly." The elimination came after a busking mission, a public outdoor performance, where the trainees had to prove they could handle live pressure. Felix's language barrier, according to JYP, prevented him from conveying genuine emotion through his Korean language rap verses. The decision shattered the room. Bang Chan, who had personally selected Felix for the group and who shared the same Australian background, was visibly devastated. The remaining members were left to reorganize choreography, redistribute song parts, and emotionally cope with losing another teammate. They had to rework their arrangements for the song Ya 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 as a 7-member unit, which exposed just how integral both Lee No and Felix had been to the group's dynamic. And then the fans got involved. Within days of the eliminations, a hashtag began trending across social media. #9orNone. It was not a polite request. Fans organized petitions on platforms like change.org, flooded comment sections, and made their position clear. Stray Kids was 9 members or it was nothing. The campaign was built on a simple observation that the viewers at home could see plainly. The group was visibly incomplete without them. The chemistry was different. The energy was off. The formations had gaps that no amount of rearranging could fill. Episode 9 changed everything. Park Jin-young visited the group and announced a final mission, a live broadcast performance that would determine whether Stray Kids would debut as 7 or as 9. He brought Lee No and Felix back into the room, not as confirmed members, as candidates for a last chance. The mission was designed to answer one question: was this group stronger with all 9 of them, or had it already proven it could survive without them? The answer, when the 9 of them stood together on that stage, was obvious. Lee No had not stopped training after his elimination. He had continued working on his rap and vocal technique, even without a guaranteed future. Felix had done the same, throwing himself into Korean language study and performance refinement, despite having every reason to feel defeated. When Park Jin-young watched all 9 perform together for the final time, he saw what the fans had been saying all along. The group was not the same without them. He reinstated both. All 9 members would debut together. On March 25, 2018, Stray Kids released their debut EP, I Am Not, with the lead track, District 9, as a complete 9-member group. And the 2 members who had been cut? They did not fade into the background. Lee No became the group's main dancer, the technical backbone of their choreography, and a performer whose professional precision, sharpened by years of dancing before he ever became an idol, anchored Stray Kids' reputation for elite stage presence. He went on to become a global brand ambassador for Gucci. Felix became one of the most recognizable members in all of K-pop, known for an extraordinarily deep voice that became the group's sonic signature, the kind of voice that stops you mid-scroll. His lines in tracks like God's Menu became viral moments that pulled millions of new listeners into the fandom. He was inducted into the UNICEF Honors Club for his philanthropic work. The member who was cut for not speaking Korean well enough became a global icon whose voice transcended language entirely. 2 members eliminated on national television, 2 members who could have walked away, 2 members who refused to, and whose return made Stray Kids the group the world would eventually know. And what that complete group did next with their music? That is a story about breaking an entirely different set of rules.
Number 3. The builders of their own noise, Stray Kids. The standard blueprint of the K-pop industry resembles an assembly line where artists act as the final executors of a pre-established creative vision. Companies acquire tracks from international songwriting camps, hire external choreographers to design every stage movement, and employ production houses to mix and master the audio, leaving the artists to step into a pre-constructed mold. This division of labor has defined the genre for decades, producing highly polished music for the global market. However, Stray Kids decided to completely dismantle this convention before they even officially debuted. The engine of their autonomy is the production unit 3 Racha, consisting of Bang Chan, Changbin, and Han. Before the survival show introduced them to the public, the 3 trainees spent their nights in cramped training rooms, using basic software to write, compose, and record their own music. Operating under pseudonyms, Bang Chan as CB97, Changbin as Spurb, and Han as J.1, they uploaded original tracks to SoundCloud in late 2016 and early 2017. Their public unit debut was on January 18, 2017, uploading their first tracks, Intro and The Dreams. Maintaining a bi-weekly release schedule, they compiled their original songs into 3 mixtape EPs, J:2017/mixtape in April, 3 Days in August, and Horizon in December. These early projects contained raw, unpolished tracks like Runner's High, Don Quixote, Matryoshka, and Broken Compass, which was later reworked for the main group. When JYP Entertainment founder Park Jin-young first evaluated the group for their survival show in late 2017, he was surprised to discover that the trainees were not using tracks provided by the company, but were instead performing songs they had written and produced themselves. Their first major challenge on the show was to perform a self-written song, which resulted in Elevator, a track that established their self-producing identity. Park Jin-young was initially skeptical, criticizing the vocal range because the key was too high for a male group, but the members worked to adjust the arrangement rather than giving up their creative control. Within 3 Racha, the division of creative labor is highly specialized. Bang Chan operates as the primary producer, handling the technical aspects of arrangement, track building, MIDI programming, and synthesizer orchestration. Changbin acts as the conceptual anchor, setting thematic directions and writing complex, rhythmic rap verses characterized by sharp delivery. Han brings a melodic sensibility, composing hook-driven toplines and writing introspective or high-speed verses that bridge the gap between their aggressive hip-hop roots and pop accessibility. Together, they have written and composed the vast majority of Stray Kids' extensive discography, registering hundreds of songs with the Korea Music Copyright Association, known as KOMCA. By 2026, Bang Chan had accumulated 236 registered songs with KOMCA, Changbin had reached 201, and Han had reached 196, making all 3 of them full members of the prestigious Copyright Association, an honor reserved for only 25 associate members each year based on royalty earnings and membership duration. This creative control allowed the group to develop a highly distinct and polarizing sonic identity. In their early years, domestic and international critics often labeled their music as noise music due to its heavy reliance on industrial beats, chaotic electronic dance music drops, sirens, construction sounds, and aggressive synth lines, arguing that such chaotic arrangements would alienate the general public. Yet, this polarizing sound design is precisely what allowed them to carve out a unique niche in a crowded global marketplace. Rather than retreating from this criticism to chase safer, more traditional pop trends, Stray Kids leaned into it, using the noise label as a badge of honor. This defiance culminated in one of the most critical decisions of their career during the preparation for their first full-length studio album, Go Live, in the summer of 2020. The group had already finalized the album, recorded all the tracks, and selected a different lead single to be the title track. However, during a late-night session, rewrote a new song called God's Menu, which used the metaphor of a restaurant kitchen to describe their self-production process. The track featured a unique, non-traditional structure, an industrial trap beat, and Felix's iconic, ultra-deep vocal delivery. Upon hearing the demo, the members collectively agreed that God's Menu was the true representation of their artistic identity, far superior to the song they had already prepared. Bang Chan took the song to the JYP executives, knowing that requesting a title track change so close to the album release was a massive logistical and financial risk. It meant discarding completed choreography, altering the album's promotional schedule, and convincing the company to invest in a completely different concept. Park Jin-young listened to the track and recognized its potential, greenlighting the switch. The decision was validated almost immediately. The music video for God's Menu became the group's first to surpass 100 million views on YouTube, transforming their career trajectory and establishing them as global pioneers of the mala taste genre in K-pop. They followed this success with Backdoor later that year, which was included in Time magazine's list of the 10 best songs of 2020 at number 8, praising the track for its genre-defying production that blended air horns, R&B, jazz, and trap. In 2021, they released Thunderous, which integrated traditional Korean instruments like the kwangwari, taepyeongso, and gaejeum with modern trap beats, proving that they could merge cultural heritage with contemporary sound. The group's commitment to self-production extended to all members, who frequently contribute to sub-unit tracks and solo projects, ensuring that the entire group has a voice in their musical output. Their transition from a rookie group dismissed as making too much noise to an industry powerhouse validated their unconventional approach. In 2023, they released S-Class, a song that combined hip-hop, electronic, and pop sections in a highly complex structure, further pushing the boundaries of what K-pop could sound like. By insisting on writing their own songs, Stray Kids proved that a K-pop group could achieve global scale without sacrificing their authentic voice or relying on external hitmakers. To fully comprehend the scale of this creative autonomy, one must look at how K-pop agencies traditionally select music. In companies like JYP Entertainment, songs are typically chosen through a structured committee system that involves blind listening tests, where songs submitted by global publishers are played without revealing the composer's identity, and staff members vote on their suitability. Stray Kids, however, managed to bypass this gatekeeping process because the agency granted them the trust to define their own musical direction, although the final approval still rested with the executive board. This trust was not given freely. It had to be earned through consistent quality and distinct concepts. The breakthrough came with their 2019 release Myro, a track that combined a heavy electronic drop with a haka-style chant, animalistic growls, and bird sounds. The song won their first ever music show trophy on Net's M Countdown on April 4, 2019, exactly 376 days after their debut, proving that their self-produced noise could find mainstream success. Even as they achieved global superstardom, the group refused to outsource their production. Their 2023 release La 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 and their 2024 hit CHK CHK Boom were both composed and produced by rewrote, demonstrating that their core musical identity remained unchanged despite massive commercial success and collaborations with international figures like actors Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. This relentless commitment to their own vision transformed how the industry viewed self-producing idols, changing the narrative from a marketing gimmick to a viable artistic path. This refusal to conform to the standard industry blueprint did more than just establish their creative credibility. It set the stage for an unprecedented commercial run on the global music charts that would completely shock the international recording industry, proving that self-produced music could dominate on a global scale. Indeed, their success challenged the traditional metrics of commercial viability, redefining the parameters of what a self-sufficient group could achieve in the modern pop landscape. Number 2, the conquerors of the American charts, Stray Kids. The Billboard 200 chart serves as the definitive metric of musical success in the United States, the largest music market in the world. Established in its modern form in the mid-20th century, the chart ranks the most popular albums of the week based on multi-metric consumption, which combines traditional physical album sales, digital downloads, track equivalent albums, and streaming equivalent albums. To understand the scale of Stray Kids' achievement, one must examine the complex rules set by Luminate, the data tracking service that compiles the chart. Under these regulations, a single album unit can be achieved through one traditional physical sale, 10 individual digital track downloads from the album, or a specific ratio of on-demand audio and video streams. Specifically, 1,250 premium subscription streams, or 3,750 ad-supported streams, equal one album unit. In recent years, Billboard has tightened these rules to prevent chart manipulation, banning ticket album bundles in 2020 and restricting bulk digital downloads. Topping this chart represents a significant commercial achievement for any artist, but for international acts performing primarily in non-English languages, the barrier to entry has historically been exceptionally high. For the first few decades of K-pop's global expansion, the Billboard 200 remained virtually impenetrable for Korean artists, who struggled to gain traction in Western retail spaces. The breakthrough came in May 2018 when BTS topped the chart with Love Yourself, Tear, followed by Super-M in 2019, and Blackpink in 2022. Beyond these acts, achieving a #1 album in the United States was a feat that remained out of reach for almost the entire K-pop industry, as local distribution was difficult to establish. Prior to March 2022, Stray Kids had never placed an album on the Billboard 200 chart. While they had built a substantial international following, their commercial footprint had not yet translated into the massive sales figures required to compete with domestic American artists. A key logistical turning point occurred in early 2020 when JYP Entertainment expanded its strategic partnership with Republic Records, a division of Universal Music Group, which initially focused on marketing but soon grew to encompass full distribution. This partnership allowed Stray Kids' physical albums to be distributed directly to major United States retailers like Target, Walmart, and Barnes & Noble, placing their music side by side with mainstream U.S. releases. This meant that when American fans purchased physical copies in local stores, Luminate could track the sales, counting them directly toward the Billboard 200. This distribution network laid the groundwork for the release of their EP Ordinary in March 2022, which served as their breakthrough moment in the West. Debuting at #1 on the Billboard 200, Ordinary earned 110,000 equivalent album units in its first week, with 103,000 of that total coming from traditional album sales. This debut made them only the third Korean group in history to top the chart, signaling a dramatic shift in their global market position. 6 months later, in October 2022, they released Maxident, which also debuted at #1, earning 117,000 equivalent album units, driven by 110,000 in physical sales. In June 2023, their third consecutive entry, 5 Star, secured the top spot with 249,000 units, including 235,000 in traditional sales. The album's lead single, S-Class, showcased their signature production style, combining hip-hop, electronic, and pop sections in a highly complex structure. The release shattered K-pop pre-order records at the time, accumulating over 5.13 million pre-orders globally. This massive pre-debut demand translated directly into first-week US sales, demonstrating that their US fanbase was expanding rapidly. By November 2023, Rockstar became their fourth consecutive #1 debut, earning 224,000 units. The lead track, La 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 La, also made history by entering the Billboard Hot 100 chart at number 90, making Stray Kids only the second K-pop boy group in history to enter the Hot 100 after BTS. This crossover success proved that their music was not only selling albums but also generating significant track-level consumption and streaming interest in the competitive US market. In July 2024, they released ATE, which debuted at #1 with 232,000 units, matching a historic record set by American rapper DMX, who was previously the only artist in Billboard history to debut their first 5 studio albums at the top spot. DMX achieved his historic run between 1998 and 2003 under the Def Jam label, beginning with its Dark and Hell is Hot and concluding with Grand Champ. His streak was defined by a raw, aggressive hip-hop style that bypassed the polished pop trends of the late 90s. By matching this record, Stray Kids, a self-produced K-pop group from Seoul singing primarily in Korean, drew a striking parallel to the late rapper's career, proving that intense, uncompromising music could capture the top spot without relying on typical commercial pop machinery. Their lead track from ATE, CHK Boom, further consolidated their international appeal, entering the Hot 100 and featuring actor Ryan Reynolds in its promotional campaigns. By late 2024, the release of their project Hop Hip Tape, or HOP, secured their 6th consecutive #1 debut, breaking DMX's record and establishing them as the sole record holders for the longest streak of consecutive #1 debuts from their first chart entry. The momentum continued into 2025 with the release of Karma, which debuted at #1 with 313,000 units, followed by Do It in late 2025, which earned 295,000 units, of which 286,000 were physical sales. This completed a streak of 8 consecutive albums debuting at the absolute top of the Billboard 200. To put this achievement into perspective, legendary Western acts like the Beatles, Taylor Swift, Eminem, or Elton John did not debut their first 8 chart-entering albums at #1 on the Billboard 200. Even during the peak of physical sales in the 90s and early 2000s, solo artists and bands typically built their chart presence over several album releases before achieving a #1 debut. The mechanism behind this commercial dominance is rooted in a physical sales model that Stray Kids and their fanbase mastered. Unlike the domestic American market, which has transitioned almost entirely to streaming, K-pop utilizes physical albums as collectible art pieces that serve as physical extensions of the fandom experience. Stray Kids releases feature elaborate packaging, including extensive photobooks, postcards, posters, and randomized collectible photo cards. This approach encourages fans to purchase multiple physical copies, transforming the act of buying music into a hobby of collection. The collectible cards, which feature photos of the members, are often traded globally, creating a secondary market and driving high demand for sealed albums. Additionally, JYP Entertainment designs multiple visual editions of each album, featuring different cover arts and concepts, which appeals to collectors who want to complete the set. This physical sales strategy acts as a massive engine for Billboard success, as traditional sales carry more weight on the chart than individual streams. For example, out of the 295,000 units earned by Do It, a staggering 286,000 were direct physical sales. This reliance on traditional sales insulated the group from the volatility of streaming algorithms and allowed them to outpace major Western artists who relied heavily on digital plays, whose chart performance could fluctuate week by week based on streaming playlist additions. Furthermore, this historic chart run was achieved with minimal US radio airplay, television appearances, or mainstream media exposure, relying instead on a highly dedicated, direct-to-consumer global fanbase that organized street teams, digital streaming goals, and bulk buying campaigns. By securing 8 consecutive #1 debuts on the Billboard 200, Stray Kids established a level of chart consistency that redefined what was commercially possible for a self-produced international group in the digital age, proving that language barriers are secondary to a deeply engaged audience. But while they were accumulating millions of dollars in album sales and shattering Western industry expectations, the members were also quietly redirecting their wealth toward urgent global humanitarian causes. Number 1. The silent donors behind the scenes, Stray Kids. In an industry where public relations campaigns are meticulously orchestrated to maximize positive brand image, the line between genuine charity and strategic corporate social responsibility often becomes blurred. For many entertainment acts, philanthropic announcements are timed to coincide with major releases, award campaigns, or crisis management protocols, serving as a tool to soften public perception and generate favorable press coverage. However, the members of Stray Kids established a completely different relationship with philanthropy, integrating consistent, high-value personal donations into their lives outside of promotional cycles. The scale of their individual and collective giving has quietly positioned them among the most active philanthropists in the entertainment industry, using their personal earnings to fund long-term humanitarian initiatives. This commitment to silent advocacy is exemplified by Felix, who has consistently prioritized pediatric healthcare and water sanitation programs. In January 2024, Felix donated 100 million won, equivalent to approximately 76,000 United States dollars, to the Korean Committee for UNICEF. This specific donation was dedicated to supporting children in Laos who faced severe developmental challenges due to malnutrition, poor sanitation, and restricted access to safe drinking water. In recognition of this contribution, Felix was inducted as the youngest ever member of the UNICEF Honors Club, a group reserved for donors who have contributed significant sums to the organization. Rather than treating this as a simple financial transaction, Felix took a personal leave of absence in February 2024 to travel to the Adaphu region in Laos. During this field visit, he worked alongside local UNICEF staff, visiting schools and health centers to assist with physical nutrition evaluations, distribute clean water kits, and conduct public health demonstrations, such as teaching children proper hand-washing techniques. He followed this with another 100 million won donation in September 2024 to mark his birthday, split between UNICEF's Laotian projects and domestic breakfast programs for underfunded Korean schools, eventually leading to his appointment as a UNICEF Korea Goodwill Ambassador. Similarly, Lee No has maintained a quiet, decade-long commitment to global child welfare and domestic medical aid. In January 2024, Lee No became the youngest member of World Vision's Bob Pierce Honor Club following a 100 million won donation to the organization's Global Food Crisis Response Project, which provided emergency nutrition to children in areas facing severe famine. His relationship with World Vision was not a sudden development. He had been consistently sponsoring 4 children in underfunded regions through the organization since 2014, long before he ever signed a contract with JYP Entertainment. To mark his birthday in October 2025, Lee No donated 200 million won, dividing the funds equally between 2 very different causes. He gave 100 million won to the Samsung Medical Center to cover the surgical and transplant costs of pediatric and adult patients with severe illnesses who could not afford treatment. The remaining 100 million won was donated to Nabia Sarangi, a domestic cat protection group, to fund the rescue, medical treatment, and shelter care of abandoned stray cats, a cause close to him, as he had volunteered at animal shelters since he was 13 years old and had adopted 3 rescue cats. The group's youngest member, I.N., established his own philanthropic record by focusing on pediatric cancer research and child welfare. In 2024, at the age of 23, I.N. became the youngest ever member of Child Fund Korea's Green Noble Club, a designation reserved for individuals who have donated at least 100 million won to the Child Development Agency. To celebrate his birthday in February 2026, I.N. donated another 100 million won to the National Cancer Center in South Korea, specifically earmarking the funds to cover treatment costs for low-income pediatric cancer patients and to support specialized psychological therapy programs for adolescents undergoing chemotherapy. This followed a similar 100 million won donation he made in 2025 to the Samsung Medical Center to support pediatric cancer care. Beyond these individual actions, the members have repeatedly mobilized as a collective unit during major global disasters. In April 2025, following devastating wildfires that swept through the Gyeongsang-Namdo and North Gyeongsang provinces in South Korea, the group collectively donated 800 million won to disaster recovery efforts. They split the sum equally, sending 400 million won to the Hope Bridge Korea Disaster Relief Association to build temporary housing and supply emergency kits to displaced families, and 400 million won to World Vision to support long-term economic rehabilitation for the affected communities. This pattern of high-value, targeted giving across different organizations proved that the group viewed their massive commercial success not just as a metric of personal achievement, but as a resource to be systematically redistributed. By quietly integrating these massive donations into their careers, Stray Kids demonstrated that the most surprising thing a global pop group can do is use their platform to silently rebuild communities behind the scenes. This quiet dedication to humanitarian work, free from the usual fanfare of corporate public relations, stands as the final proof that Stray Kids' true impact extends far beyond the charts.